what I'm talking about. This is a 67 or thereabouts Marshall 50-watt Plexi, and an actual Plexi. You know, we call everything Plexis, but this is an actual Plexi. Take a closer look at that panel. Look at that. So obviously we got some knobs missing their caps. That's pretty typical. But otherwise, this thing looks very clean. The Plexi panel in particular is very, very clean. To have a replaced, looks like standby switch. But overall, I mean, look at this thing. Gosh. So sick. So, welcome to the Eats a Guitar YouTube channel. A little late on that. Let's go and flip it over and see what it looks like on the back. Similar story on the back. Looks very, very nice. Love this white plate. So sick. Now, I must admit, I am not an expert by any means on vintage Marshalls, especially the Plexi era. Don't have any experience really firsthand with these, so I'm excited to check this out. There's the serial number. And then just moving on down the plate. Looks pretty dang good to me. It's got the Bolgan connector, whatever you call those. Telex is in very good condition. So let's go ahead and take the back off and see what's looking over there, or maybe we'll just pull the whole chassis out. All right, let's see what we got here. So the output transformer date code or part number, I'm not sure, 784139. No idea how to interpret that. Power transformer, 1202118. Choke, I don't see anything on it. Unfortunately, we are missing the piece of paper that says the model, the serial number, the date. That's unfortunate. All of the tubes are swapped to JJ. And then we do have F&T caps. So let's go ahead and flip it around. All right, let's see what we got here. Wow, look at that. So good. Okay, need a second to take it all in. There's a heck of a lot to glean just from my first glance here. I need to do some research because I just don't know enough just off the top of my head about these early Plexi amplifiers. It looks great. Obviously, it looks mostly original on the board specifically. Transformers look good. There's a few things. We got a couple replaced pots here, more modern, obviously older. We've got all of the original electrolytics on the board, including the bias caps, which this is important to replace. Of all the electrolytics to replace, these are pretty important. So definitely going to be recommending replacing those. I don't know if you can see, but I'll shift it over and zoom in. It's got solder splatter on it, so that's not always a great sign. It does have screen resistors either added or replaced, not sure. I believe this is a death cap. It's hooked up to, it's hooked up to the fuse here going to ground, so that's not great. The rectifier, when I first saw this amp, I was going, where in the world is the rectifier? And here it is over here. So just another feature of these early Marshalls, I guess. We have a replaced standby switch. You can see it's just kind of, I don't know if you can see that. Just kind of tack soldered on top. And then you can see the bus wires kind of all over the place. Looks like they tried to solder to the pot here and it just lifted up. And yeah, over here, just some more poor solder connections there and splatters of solder on the back of the chassis. And looking at the caps, so we got the original Hunt's caps here. Got a little bit of bulge right there. It's a dual 32. These are your bias caps, and then you got your cathode bypass cap over here. 320 microfarad. Quite large. I believe, based off what I'm seeing here, that this would be considered a super bass, unless this is before they had that designation. I don't really know. We got a very small bright cap, a 56 picofarad right there. And we can see the phase inverter coupling caps, the 0.1s. These are reserved for the super bass model. I believe on a super lead, these would be a 0.022, if I remember correctly. And then over here as well, we don't have that split cathode set up. And so we got that single large cap here. We're missing that, 0.68 microfarad you'll see on a super lead. But again, this might even be too early for those designations. I don't know off the top of my head. Have to do a little bit of research, but overall looks excellent. And I'm really, really excited by what I see. It's something very unique and different than what I'm used to. And I've been itching to get my hands on a Plexi for a while. I've worked on a old Plexi Park before, just converting that to EL34s, but looking forward to getting more experience with one in this case. So definitely going to be recommending a recap of the rest of the electrolytics. It's got 2 F&T caps, might as well do the rest. Only one I'd be, I guess, okay leaving is this one. This one's probably fine, but this is showing some bulging, and this is your bias, so definitely want to set that up. There's no trim pot on this, obviously, to adjust the bias. Now, the owner of this amp kind of warned me ahead of time. He said, if I can remember correctly, it's got higher plate voltage than normal, but what was it? I can't remember if I have it forwards or backwards on that, but basically he was saying that it's biasing, or the previous tech, I guess, told him it's biasing really well, but it does have either higher or lower plate voltage than normal, but the current checks out, so it's got lower current or higher current depending on what it is. So we'll have to test that. We got, again, all brand new JJs in this amplifier, so those are all probably fine. So yeah, okay, I'm gonna do a little bit of research, and then I'll jump back in once I'm ready. As a starting point, let's go ahead and see how it's biasing. See if we can confirm the owner's report. 416/20. So that is biasing extraordinarily cool, 33% for an EL34. So that is very, very cool. They're both brand new matched JJ EL34, so I don't think it's the tubes. So yeah, very, very cool. Now, again, the amp sounded great, so maybe there's some secret there, but and this doesn't seem like crazy plate voltage at all for 20. So that's kind of interesting. But let's go ahead and see what the heaters are running at. I'm at 120 from the wall. So yeah, not getting up to 6.3 with 120, 121 from the wall. So that's good. Everything seems pretty healthy. Like I said, this is quiet. With that, I'm going to call it a night, do a little bit more research on these amplifiers, find a schematic, and then we'll circle back to this tomorrow. I measured all the resistors, and they all test spot on. These Iskras are very impressive. They all measure pretty much exactly what the value is. And there is no noise from running the amp, so it seems to be running well. Clean up these connections, like on the replaced standby switch, just pour solder joints. We can clean that up, no big deal. Remove the death cap. Screen resistors are already there. Those are fine. And yeah, just kind of clean up some solder joints here and there, clean up the tubes, bias it properly, and that's about it. Not a major project here in comparison to some of the other ones we've had, but this amp is awesome, and I cannot wait to get dialed in. So with that, we'll order the parts and get to work once they arrive. Parts have arrived, so we can get going on the Plexi. All of this stuff came from Amplified Parts, what I always shop from. So we've got the F&T 33 microfarad dual can cap will go there. We got 2 8 microfarad caps. Those will be the bias cap replacements. And we've got a 250 microfarad 25 volt, and that'll replace the cathode bypass cap. And then I've got a little Pyre 25K trim pot. You can see that. And that'll make the bias adjustable. And then we'll have to figure out what resistor to pair with it. But yeah, should be good to go there. So let's get to work. So let's go ahead and start with the larger of the 4 caps we're going to swap here today. Just going to go ahead and add a little bit of solder, get the joints to flow a little bit. See if they just pop right up. There's 1. There's 2. On the back side. Cool. I am curious if the dimensions are the same diameter-wise between these 2 caps. Look awfully close. I'm guilty of not doing this every time. It's not always that important, but it's a nice thing to do when you're, trying to work on cleaning out joints and giving room for new components. You don't want to burn up the resistor, so sometimes I'll try and add a heat sink to them. Because I need to really get all the solder out so I can get the new components to go into the hole like that. While I'm in here, this plastic cap just looks super out of place, so I'm going to go ahead and replace it. I've got a little bit of a stash of old mustard caps. The value is slightly larger, so it's 0.022 for there, and what I have is a 0.027, which is not a big enough difference to matter at all. It's just significantly easier to source than the 0.022s. They're obviously very, very, very valuable and sought after. but it's effectively the same thing, and it's still a mustard cap made the exact same way. So I'm just going to go ahead and swap that over while we're in here. Yeah, see, that looks way better. So let's go ahead and now get the F&T cap going. Perfect, that looks good. I just noticed it looks like this was never soldered from the factory. If I can zoom in a little bit. Right there, doesn't look like there was any solder ever added, so it's kind of interesting. Let's go and add some solder to that now. Not sure if you'll be able to see this or not, but they're starting to bulge. And obviously the bias caps are very, very important. You need to make sure that those are very healthy. All right, important to make sure you get the orientation of these correct. You can see the positives on this side. Cut these down even shorter. Now the tricky part is it's just very, very little room to fit anything in here, and we've got to fit a resistor lead on this side and another wire on that side. So basically what we might have to do is just use some wire wrapped around the turret itself. You can see Marshall did that all over. Like, for example, these cap leads, they're wrapped around there. So we might have to do something similar. But TBD. Not set in stone yet. I'm just going to see if I can fit these two together with room to spare. Looks like I might be able to. One of the good things about the MOD caps is that they do have very, very skinny leads. So they actually fit very easily in a lot of places. Kind of an underrated quality. All right, so there's those two connections made. You can see that the wiper and this one are jumpered, and then that will go to ground just like that. So we can go ahead and solder this in once I just get this leg situated so we can J-hook on a resistor. All right, so this measures 69K, and we're gonna go ahead, and this bias is very, very cool. So I have got over here a 33K, and this is a 25K. So 69K bias is way too cool. So I'm hoping this gives us in a good range. This was actually what I used for a nearly identical Park amp, same kind of era Plexi. This is what I used to bias it perfectly with EL34s. So that's the starting point, I guess. I'm just gonna go ahead and tack in something. Maybe I'll just do the decade box actually to dial it in for sure, just to confirm, but I'm pretty sure this will work. So we want to set this at the maximum because this will be the coldest bias setting it'll do with this setup. Make sure that that is cold enough, and then we have plenty of room to go up. So let's go ahead and grab the special connector, hook it up to the Variac, and we'll have the power low because we don't want to exceed voltage of any of the caps with no load on it, but this should help us to narrow it down. Variac at about 100 volts, and it looks like we are doing pretty good. So we've got negative voltage where we should. Let's confirm we have it on the other grid as well. Cool. Okay, that looks all good to me. So now we'll just put in the power tubes and make sure it's not running too hot, and go from there. Wires everywhere, but we've got it hooked up. It's leaned back a little bit just to make sure I can fit the bias probe on. Go ahead and give it some voltage. See what we're running at. Again, I'm just going to leave it on the Variac pretty low. I just want to make sure we get negative voltage, and we are. So let that warm up for a sec. So really our target is kind of around 45 milliamps or so, if I had to guess. All right, that's 121 from the wall. And it looks like we're just past that at the minimum setting. On this tube, the other tube is at 43, 48. So let's check the hotter of the two tubes. 79%. So this is too hot. So we try and change the resistor value back here and raise the value to lower this. So I just went up to 43, which is not really a value I can find. It's really 33 to 47K. So let's go to 47K. All right, so look at how much that cooled it down, going to a 47K resistor. Now we can warm it back up with the bias box. Remember, it was at its coldest setting before. So let's see what range we can get back with this. So look at that. So I'm about halfway on the bias pot, and we're right at 45, which is my target. So it looks like 47K is going to be right on the money for us. And let's just go ahead and check what that reads. 74%, a little bit hot, no problem. We got plenty of range to go backwards, only about halfway on the trim pot. We'll bring it back to about 40. So this might have jumped down a little bit, or up, I mean, 418. All right, that's perfect. So just about halfway on the trim pot, just under halfway, gets a 67% plate dissipation. So we got plenty of range to go up or down with this setup. So we just need to install a 47K resistor there. Unfortunately, I doubt I have any vintage 47K resistors. It's kind of an odd value. So is what it is. We'll just grab whatever I have that makes the most sense here. Surprisingly, I was able to find a 47K vintage resistor here. Make sure that's in there okay. Get some solder flowing. Kind of takes a similar trick as doing a dome on fenders, where you have to add some solder as kind of a blob on top. So that's solid. Now I just got to get this connection done, and we're all good. We're all good. Perfect. Okay, that looks really good. So let's go ahead, plug in the tubes again, check the bias. We should be pretty close. Just have to back it down a little bit. Nothing too crazy. By back it down, I mean turn it this way a little bit. Kind of lift it up and show you guys what it looks like too from the side. Zoom in. Cool, that looks pretty good. So let's get the tubes and check the bias. Now we've got it biased right around the 60% range, plenty of room to go up or down. We can check it with the oscilloscope when we're finally done with the amplifier, make sure there's no excess crossover distortion, and bias it a little bit further with that method. So from here, it's really just cleaning up nasty work. So cleaning up the install of this cap, cleaning up all of the grounding on the pots there, removing the death cap, cleaning up this switch. So lots of little things like that, removing the death cap, so on and so forth. But I'm very happy with where it's at now. So we'll end here and pick it up a different day. Running 412, really quiet. Everything's great, right? Everything's groovy. Unless the amp just happens to be bumped. Just get it to do it on camera here. There we go. Just a slight shift. Now listen to it. It's got a gnarly buzz. I just slightly move the chassis. No buzz. Not even touching the chassis. No buzz. Nothing to do with